Guys, I just want to do another video on kind of overcoming art block. So today I want to talk about things that relax your brain. There is actually scientific evidence that many of these things do soothe your brain. For me, sometimes if my brain's a little tangled up, it's very hard to focus. It's very hard to do certain things. The executive function gets very real. So sometimes just doing these things helps loosen your head up, get you out of your own head, and allows you to, just get started. And a lot of times, I know for me, just getting started is usually the big thing. And once I do, then I can kind of flow through things after that. So we already talked about it, and I'm not going to put too much into it, but doing abstract work, of any kind. So you guys saw this the other day, and that one, abstract work. It can be grid work. It can be anything really. I know one of the books I showed you guys previously is where I got this from. These are just concentric circles, and you make each one a little different. So nothing special, just abstract, just putting the paint down and letting it flow. That's a big one. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because we did talk about it previously. I want to talk about repeating shapes. So repeating shapes is very soothing to your brain, and it doesn't have to be any specific shape. It can be whatever shape floats your boat. So in this case, for me, it was leaves, and then doodling over the top of them. One of my favorites, where did it go? Is the spirals. I don't know why. I do find spirals very soothing. So you'll see them kind of pop up in random places sometimes on my paintings. It's funny because I really just wanted to put paint down. I wanted to see color. I wanted to do this. Started layering them on top of it, and then I ended up really liking it. It ended up being fun, I guess. So let's see. I've also got this one, where you color coordinate your circles, and you lay down different ones. You open ones and closed ones, and they overlap and they bleed together and that kind of thing. I actually really like doing these. I like watching the colors blend together. So you can see how they sort of flowed together. This actually also kind of gives you a good, I guess, feel for how strong some colors are, and when you lay them down, they completely start pushing other stuff out of the way. So that's kind of a cool thing, I guess. It's a good way to see how your paints react together. So you can also do, what was it in this one? In this case, it was just like raindrops, and I think I started with a color and added and changed and mixed, and this was probably a clean off your palette thing for me, if I had to guess. I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it was. You guys know I don't like a bunch of paint sitting in my palette. I like to clean it off every so often. And then here I just did some squares. So again, just overlapping them, watching the colors flow together, that kind of thing. The repetition is what helps your brain just relax. And there's no rhyme or reason. You don't have to make it color coordinated like I did in other places. You can just use colors that you like. You can use, pick a color, say blue, and you want to use different shades of blue. It doesn't matter. Any of that stuff works. So it's just the repetition that makes a big impact on your brain. So the other thing, and I saw this in another video, where they set up just these patches of color, basically set up these squares, and then every day they would go in and doodle something. Y'all, doodling is an art form. I wish I was a good doodler. I am not a good doodler. But this was kind of cool because you could lay down just patches of color and then come through and just use this as basically a Kickstarter of, hey, once I get started, then I can move on to something a little more intentional. So unfortunately for me, this works, but maybe it works a little too good because once I get started, I tend to doodle the whole page. I think this one I did like a couple at a time. And you can do whatever you want. You know, I was looking at a paisley thing and trying to figure it out. I had a flower thingy, I think, that I was kind of looking at like different shapes and different ideas for that. And I think this was a stencil somewhat. So, you know, whatever floats your boat, whatever makes you happy, but it's just a little starting point, low pressure. You know, you just have to do this one square and using that as a guide. So the doodles are good. I showed you guys this before, so I won't show a whole lot, but I like doing these kinds of fades where your colors go into each other. I will do them for all kinds of colors. I did this one. This one was watercolor, and then I went back and was like, "Ooh, let's do it in gouache." So we did it in gouache, and then I did this in Neocolor, and they're all basically the same. You can do these kinds of fades and then decide what goes over it later. Again, this is about just putting paint down and getting it to flow and getting started and just letting your brain chill out. You know, so you can put, it doesn't even have to be complex, like trees. I think I did my trees a little differently there than I did here. So just the little things, you know, you don't have to make it a big thing. It can be about the flow. But oops, let's bring that back over here. But the other thing I like to do with some of these types of fades is this kind of line work where you are putting your lines down and then rounding out your edges. So Andrea Nelson's the one that I think I saw this first at. I've seen it in a couple places now, but first place I probably saw it, and I will give you a little demonstration on it. It's really not complicated, even though it does kind of look that way. I will say on watercolor paper, a lot of people will use Sharpie. I don't particularly like Sharpie because I don't feel like it bleeds. It feathers the edges, and I don't like that. So I tend to use one of these. They're calligraphy pens. I guess these are technically like a stiff brush pen. So a lot of times I'll do the main lines in a bigger one and then fill in the angles that we're rounding off with a smaller pen. So let me come in a little closer here. Hopefully you guys can see. There we go. That'll work. Oh, now we're bouncing. Okay, so again, this is not complicated. This is just a scrap piece of paper for me. So your lines do not have to be straight. They don't have to be anything other than just lines. So however you want to do it. And let's come down this way. And like that. So once you get your lines down, like I said, I like to come in with a little different size pen, and all of these places that are V's, as Andrea says, we're just turning them into U's. And so we are just rounding off these edges, and sometimes those, no, they're not V's, but those angles are kind of open and they don't really require a whole lot, like this one. We're just rounding it out. And on these smaller ones, sometimes I'll do it all together. And I'm just going to fill that in because there's no way to round that off without losing it. And so this one's kind of a wider angle. Sometimes on these wider ones, if they're close to something else, then I do it all in one spot. But you see how we're rounding these out. Don't overthink this, okay? This is all about just letting your brain relax. And this is actually something that they can prove on MRI helps your brain relax. Now, MRI or CT, I can't remember which. But it just, like I said, helps your brain kind of chill out, be a little less excitable. I know my brain gets overstimulated a lot, but that's the joys of ADHD. And since those are close together, I'm just going to bring them in all at once. All right, and then we can do that one. Smooth that out just a little bit. So as you can see, this isn't complicated. It's not complex. Don't turn it into something that's not. You're just going to smooth these out. And once you've got them kind of how you like them, you can fill them in. You can fill them in with colored pencils or markers or paints or whatever you like to do. Me, I frequently like to do the fades and then do the lines over the top of them. This is really soothing to my brain. I do this a lot. I've got several pages in my books that are basically just this, you know, and I think even on my last journal here, I did one really and just wrote relax the brain because that's what I needed. So it's all about smoothing them out. That's it. That's all you're doing. You're just smoothing them out. Like I said, I like to do it over the top of the fade. Usually when I try to fill in after I do it, it's kind of, oops, messy and I don't like it. So like here, I tried to do it over the top. You can see the paint bled. This is again just a repeating pattern, just a angled grid pattern that I rounded off the edges on. So it's just not as neat, I guess, when I do it this way. And I usually end up not liking it as much as if I did a fade or something first and then went over the top of it. Oh, where's that other one? This one's a little better, well, better subjective, but I didn't have as much issues because I really like filled this in dark and just again made sure that most things were rounded. Clearly I messed that up there. I must have come in. I don't remember exactly how I did this one. I think this one's just watercolor. But did it that way. You can see that this color was laid down first and then I went over the top because I just, like I said, every time I try to do it, fill it in, I end up not being as happy with the end result. But it's all about just rounding these edges. And again, that's a repeated pattern, basically. You know, we're repeating that smoothing. We're repeating doing that. The other thing I will say about doodles, just pick something and doodle some. Like I doodled just some flowers, you know, playing with a little bit of techniques and what would work. And this is kind of resembles, I think, is it freesia flower? And I kind of like that. Also playing with like some angles to create a different position. So I count these as doodles. But stuff like this, you know, I've said it before, but not everything has to be perfect. Not everything has to be, for lack of a better word, art. Not everything has to be sellable or likable or anything. Sometimes you just want to put paint down, and that's okay. That's what all these exercises are for. So your abstracts, your repeated shapes, your doodles, you know, those color blends, bleeds, I don't know what else to call them. And, you know, you're rounding off your angles. Those are all things that are soothing to your brain. So give them a try. Let me know how it goes. Hopefully this will break some of that art block up for you. If it does, by all means, let me know. I'd love to hear it. And if you've got suggestions, please do let us know down in the comments. I do have, I think, 3 other videos for this that I ended up coming up with. I am trying to break them up. We've got color probably next, supplies, and then stuff that doesn't have another like category, I guess. So anyway, go out there, get your art on, and go have fun. Bye, guys.